Welcome to I See What You Mean, a podcast about how people get on the same page or don't, or perhaps shouldn't. Today my guest is William Randolph. William is a retired acquisition official who owns and runs Think Acquisition, an independent consulting and coaching firm dedicated to increasing the effectiveness of all players in the federal government acquisition space. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much. Glad to be here.
Thanks, sir. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Why don't you start with a short bio about yourself so listeners know a little bit about your background?
Sure. So the really short version, grew up on a 100-acre tobacco farm in Southern Virginia. So
there's a story right there.
Yeah, I know what hard work looks like, and I haven't seen it since I left the farm. But first caught his first thing smoking out of a small town in Southern Virginia, which was the military. So went into the Navy for 5 years, did that, came out GI Bill in hand, went to school in West Virginia, and then found the federal government and federal government procurement from a standpoint of acquisition and contract. Started as a contract specialist, and for the next 25 years, I feel like I did very well in that space. I found the people that I found the thing I was put on the earth to do. I often say I felt like a child that was lost in the woods, raised by wolves, and then my people came and found me. So when I found procurement, it was like, my people, I'm back. I'm back. They came and got me. So I retired in 2016. Did the consulting thing around the DC metro area for about 3 years, and then decided I truly found the thing that I was passionate about, which was education and training, and hung my own shingle in 2019 and haven't looked back since.
Excellent. And I know you are passionate about government acquisition, and we're going to talk more about what you're doing with it today, because you had a long career in it, but now you're doing something. Now you're in a different position. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
So, when we were preparing for the call, we talked about something interesting, very modern, and maybe highlighted by the pandemic. We talked about communication channels between government and industry. Yeah. And we talked about the fact that there are so many more today than there were when you started out.
Absolutely.
And you raised the question about whether you thought communication was better between government and industry than for the sake of having all those communication channels. So that's an interesting piece of the question of the puzzle of getting on the same page, is the communication channels. Let's start there. What are your thoughts about it? What did you see while you were on the government side of acquisition, and now you're in this in-between place helping government and industry connect? What does it look like to you?
So I've seen a big change since I left government in 2016. So you think about 8 years ago, when I was in government, there appeared to be only one or two communication channels to government. Right. That was the formal channels. You see formal things come down in sam.gov, or you saw things like RFIs and things of that nature. Yeah. It was the typical channel. Yeah. And then there was the unofficial channels, which were when we met together in conferences and affinity groups. We'd go to a big conference or something. That was an additional channel to influence, to seek to influence federal government. Now, obviously, pandemic just took out all of the expos and conferences. That's a thing. They're gradually coming back, but what has happened is they've been replicated in other fashions. So there are more communication channels, but I'm just not sure they're as effective as they could be. Truly more communication channels from a standpoint of it's now YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all of these places, LinkedIn even, from a standpoint of where I really planted my flag. LinkedIn is really where a lot of business is happening, a lot of communication is happening, and I just don't see a lot of companies doing it well.
That's interesting. So let's unpack this. You actually, when you raised the question to me, I thought you were thinking of the difference between now and maybe when you started in government. You're talking about just when you retired.
Oh, just recently.
You see this big change. Okay. Communication between government and industry it's important generally for good relationships, for good product and service delivery. It's especially important, or there's some special reasons, there's some particular reasons why it's important during an acquisition process. And my experience, and you and I did some of this together through like you said, an affinity group. It was ACT-I.
Sure.
It was okay.
Yes.
My experience was there was a great desire on the part of government to understand a little bit more about how industry made decisions, go, no-go decisions, bid, no bid, or how they thought about a technical solution, or how they priced something. And there's a great interest, same curiosity as you know, on the industry side for understanding how government writes that solicitation.
Yes, absolutely.
That Schedule C is an intended solution to a problem. You read the words on it when you're on the industry side. You read the words, but you're wondering, I wish I understood more about what they meant by some things.
Absolutely. What's behind it?
What's behind it? Not secret what's behind it. Just what's some certain things mean, so I understand the government rationale. How does the government see a problem? If I understand better how it sees a problem, I might be able to better help propose and deliver a solution.
Right. Respond to it.
That's hard to get really clear through written word.
Extremely hard.
Right. And, we know it's tough enough sometimes just to be clear between Lou and Will on some simple email communication.
Absolutely.
You do something as complicated as a solicitation.
Yes.
Right, that can be tough. So how do you see government or industry using some of the more modern, more contemporary channels, such as the social media platforms? What have you seen happening there? Because I've not seen a lot of that. I've just not been looking for it.
Yeah, so Lou, I tell you, one of the things that I actually, in my coaching practice, one of the things I coach is this concept of how to become top of mind with your government buyers and end users. Okay. So how do you do that? And the premise is really very simplistic. There is going to be a day when someone wakes up with a headache. Okay. And they don't have a headache every day, so they're not looking for Tylenol. They're not looking for Tylenol every day.
Right.
But one day they're going to wake up, backache, knee hurting, headache.
Yep.
And what you want them to do when they wake up is to remember, ooh, I remember I saw this guy over here. He sells Tylenol. Maybe I should call him. Maybe I should reach out to him. Okay. Maybe I should go try to find that piece of content where he was talking about my Tylenol. Okay. Gotcha. Maybe I should go and try to make that connection. So what we coach is having a constant drumbeat, whether that's blogs, whether that's video, whether that's articles, whatever it looks like. I have seen some of my clients, and I've even done it too, to create video podcasts that every week they're pushing content that's showing one thing. Hey, I've got Tylenol. Whenever you wake up with a headache,
think of me.
Think of me. Okay. So when that connection occurs, that's where those informal communication channels that foster influence.
Gotcha.
Because when they have a problem, they have you top of mind. That's the model that I'm speaking of.
You're talking about what's become a intelligent marketing use of the social media platforms, of that presence.
Absolutely.
Put yourself out there on multiple channels where people might find, because sometimes government customers in their personal lives will see things on other channels.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Not just the official role. And you're talking about, like you said, articles, blogs, podcasts, maybe little ads. Doesn't matter. You're just talking about be a presence. What that presumes is the very earliest steps or stages, in the acquisition process. What happens then in the thinking of a government official? What's the next thought part of the thought process?
So I don't think it's anything. I'm gonna go back to your point you made earlier. There's nothing nefarious here going on.
Right.
This is,
Absolutely,
in my opinion, the ultimate meritocracy. Okay, when I think about government procurement, the ultimate meritocracy. Those that are successful rise to the top. Those that can provide value rise to the top.
Good point.
Okay? Ultimate meritocracy. However, that system is run by humans. Okay, and humans do business with people they like, know, and trust. So the goal of these touches, of this exposure, is to increase your likeness, to increase your knowledge, and to increase your trust. Okay. The old marketing used to talk about you have to have 7 touches. People, you need to see you 7 times before they would even contemplate pulling the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
This is all about let's get the 7 touches in. Come on, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If that's a podcast, if that's an article, that's a logo, that's a little meme card. It's like, oh, these people are all over the place. They must be amazing in the space. It's getting the 7 touches in. Okay. And that's what, as a result of that, is where you grow the knowledge, likeness, and trust.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Right.
So it's not so much that it's that there's some black arts that we're trying to accomplish, some Jedi mind trick. It is simply if we understand human nature and understand that people do business with people they like, know, and trust, we must do the activities to increase those attributes.
Okay. And then what does that do for someone on the government side? How do they use or put into use the like, know, and trust factors? Because there's different ways to do acquisitions.
Absolutely.
Like, knowing, and trusting somebody could lead to a proper sole source.
Absolutely.
But when you're going, let's say it's more full and open, so bigger competition. What is a government PM on the program office side, or what's a core or a CO do with that feeling, if they've got a feeling about one or more organizations from the kind of marketing you're talking about?
So I go back to my premise that I just stated a little earlier, that federal government procurement is the ultimate meritocracy. Mm-hmm. But there is tons of discretion in that system. Mm-hmm. Okay, there are multiple points along the acquisition life cycle where discretion, meaning choice,
right?
Discretion meaning choice. There are choice opportunities that individuals can take actions based on their strategy. Right. So, for instance, we put something out to the world, RFI to the world, but in the document we said we reserve the right to talk to anyone one-on-one if we find something that's interesting. Oh, discretion.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. So now you've seen the 7 touches, the person has responded to the RFI, and now it's like, would you please come in and we want to talk to you for an hour. Let's hop on a Zoom for an hour under the guise of market research. This is actually a thing.
It is.
It's a thing.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But imagine the ability to tease out the true secret sauce simply by having planted seeds in the PM's or the contracting officer's head that these guys really, I see them all over the place. They've been talking. I listened to the podcast and they're doing all this stuff over here, and they've had connections and they've got colleagues and they've got partners. Man, we've got to get. They know something we don't know. Imagine the outsized leverage on ROI of those touches now to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Well said. I was just thinking that, and you put it well, because what every consulting company on the contracting side of the GovCon relationship hopes to do is what the phrase, shape the solicitation.
Shape
the solicitation. Again, we're going to just probably keep making this caution, but I think a lot of people who hear us know what we're talking about. We're not talking about something improper, because if you shape that solicitation, what that means is the CEO is going to put that, whatever words come out of that process, they go out to the whole world.
Sure.
Everybody Absolutely. Can bid, which again comes back to the meritocracy. If the government has met with some parties in open conversations, which are permitted at that stage of the process, and learned more about, because here's what you're talking about, I think. Really what ends up happening, Will, in my experience, was the government learns better how to ask for what it needs.
Yes.
Because it's not easy.
Yes. It's not easy. No. That's the art and science of the process.
Yeah.
Asking better questions.
The government learns better about how to ask for what it needs, so it gets back better proposals from n number of parties. Now, if Lou helped shape the solicitation, and Will sees the solicitation that comes out, you might be, let's just say that it was a better quality. It's clearer. I always wanted to understand the relationship of technical requirement to the business need. I always wanted to understand that.
Yep.
Let's say those kinds of things are clear. Now, Will's looking at that, and he's not teaming with Lou. You're just going to be able to respond to it better too.
Absolutely.
We all can respond better to it. And that's the benefit of, that's one benefit I can think of from the kind of, the whole process you're talking about that you said with coaching industry side of make some marketing effort to become that presence.
Yes.
So that perhaps you can become an influencer.
Yes. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Now, how do your former colleagues feel about that? There's so many sensitivities on the government side, and somebody doesn't want to do something wrong or cross a line or accidentally do something wrong.
Yeah.
How are you seeing folks on the government side of this equation warm up to I like this. This is good. It's okay. It's proper, and I like it. I want to use it more. Or they're saying, I'm not sure.
So Lou, here's where it's so powerful. I think the influence is occurring and they don't even know it.
Okay.
That's the true power of it.
Yeah.
Now, if you make the highly stylized, highly produced 20-minute mini movie and you try to send that around, okay, that's not going to go over well.
Yeah, right, right.
While there's a procurement on the street, it's like, oh, dude, what are you doing?
It looks obvious.
It looks obvious, okay? But if you've been doing a podcast for a year,
right,
and you've got 52
right,
episodes,
right,
and it's like, hey, I'm just going to tune in and see what they're talking about,
yeah,
and you build confidence over time, or you writing an article that says, look, congratulations, we just found some innovative thing here, and we'd like to just share with the world what we're doing. And if you'd like to hear more, link up with us, and we'll have a constant drumbeat of information, or contact us for our one-page slick. It's like it's happening. It's just happening in the background.
That makes sense.
The 7 touches are happening in the background. Now, Lou, here's the example that I often use just to try to bring this home. Mm-hmm. The government is, if you don't mind, is looking has a RFI out for apples. They want to buy apples, okay? And they assume that they want red, delicious apples. Mm-hmm. That's what the RFI. We expect to buy red, delicious apples. Now, the first thing the industry should be saying is, what are you going to do with the apples? Mm-hmm. Because that informs the type of apple that we should be providing, whether you're making applesauce, candy apples, or apple pies. Mm-hmm. Those are 3 different apples. They all could be red, but they're 3 different apples. They show up differently.
Right.
The response shows up differently. The government comes back and says, we're making apple pies. One of the respondents says, hey, look, I know you all say you all wanted red apples, but I'm going to tell you, Granny Smith apples are the best apples to make an apple pie with. The government says, come in. We know, we had never heard that before.
Right.
Please come in and talk to us. We know you sound like you've got secret sauce. We're not going to try to ask that question out in general public because we know you're not going to give the secret sauce at the industry day. But come in, let's do a one-on-one. Tell us more about this so-called Granny Smith apple. Right. Not only do they tell them about the Granny Smith apple, they bring a pie that's been baked with Granny Smith apples in it. And they taste the pie, demonstration, market research. Right. Under the guise of market, they taste the pie and say, man, this is the greatest pie we've ever tasted. Now, that construct does not result in a sole source contract for Granny Smith apples, right? But here's the shaping. The requirement changes. The government now says, we'll take any apple. Okay, right. We'll take any apple. It has just been shaped. Now, even if they went further and the government changes their requirement from red delicious to Granny Smith, think about the company that identified Granny Smith has past performance baking with Granny Smith, has the best orchards to capture Granny Smith apples. Right. They have a competitive advantage. Right. Just because of their past performance. It's not an unfair competitive advantage. Right. It's just saying we have demonstrated to the market, to the consumer, which is the government, that we have for what they want to deliver.
Exactly.
Their requirement hasn't changed. They want pies, but for the best customer experience for the pies, we have shaped this in such a fashion that we can demonstrate our prowess in the marketplace and deliver outsized, unlocked, leveraged value. That's what it's about.
Your example is a good one because I read so many solicitations where the government's doing its best to explain what it needs. and it sometimes presumes some of the solution in the ask.
Yeah.
If you need number 2 pencils, you should just ask for number 2 pencils. But we're not talking about those acquisitions as procurements. We're talking about things that are, if they're more problem solving in nature, involving IT, involving organizational processes, involving innovation. They're much more complex. And if the government presumes some or all of the answer in the way it asks the question, it might not realize it's precluded other possibilities.
Absolutely.
Like your example.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like you said, the conversations, all above board, all proper with respect to the FAR, just open up the mind of the government to go, let's ask in a different way.
Yes.
And that's, I think that's good business for everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Because really what you want in the end is you want the best solution. You want to be the provider, but from a citizen standpoint, you want the best solution to the problem the government is trying to solve. And asking the better questions, we believe, is going to get us better offers Absolutely. And better solutions. Let me ask you this question about the COs, cores, PMs, roles that will be involved in acquisitions, central roles. A lot of those folks are very busy during the day, don't have a lot of spare time. Is it likely you think that is part of their day or in personal time, they are checking out a podcast, or they are listening, or they are reading a blog, or they are... What do you believe is the case for the companies that take the time, because it's very time consuming, and make the effort to market the way you're talking about? Let's say multi-channel.
Sure.
Getting their message out through different channels, and each one, sort of a proper use. You gotta know what you're doing on each channel. What's the likelihood that government officials have some time these days to check into those things so that when they wake up with the headache, they remember what they saw?
Yeah, I think it's, if I had to put a number on it, it's 60-40. Okay, yeah. It's 60, maybe 63, 66, 34. It's like two thirds. We're leaning that way, but we have to acknowledge there is a group of acquisition professionals that are still doing it the old way. Mm-hmm. That think the first time a company should be doing capture and shaping is when the RFP drops.
Comes out.
Okay. And anyone in industry will tell you, if the first time you see something is when it drops on sam.gov,
you're
too late.
You're late.
Move on.
You're late.
Move on. Someone's been tracking that thing for months.
Right.
And had a head start.
Yeah.
Thinking about it, putting a team together, doing solutioning, even if it's at the RFI stage. And my gracious, what I have learned since I left government is that industry spends technical term, gobs of money trying to understand as early upstream as possible what the federal government is going to be doing. Strategy. And it's people's jobs. People have made jobs and made very lucrative businesses trying to fill the gap in communication. Okay. Trying to figure out as soon as possible what they think. Okay. So there's no definitives. It is not definitive until it hits the street. Okay. Right. But what they think is going to occur. And I was like, wow, this is a cottage industry that has been designed and developed to fill a gap in communication.
So that there's context. There's better information, broader context. When that solicitation drops and you read it, you're not thinking about something for the first time. You've got background on it.
Absolutely.
The other thing, so here's a thought on your point, which is a fair point. We've got a contracting community that's in the process of retiring. I mean, look at us. I'm 61. Right?
51.
And you retired from a full career of service, and now you're doing part 2 of what you want to do. Contracting officials are going to retire. Younger professionals are going to come up through the ranks. Some of those are going to be much more comfortable with the social media platforms we're talking about.
Yeah, that's fair.
And just use them. Use them in their personal lives. Have built into their routine. If they work out, they listen to a podcast while they're working out. Right, those kinds of... They've just sort of woven those channels into their lives in different ways. As I've been working on my own marketing for the practice I'm rebranding, I was surprised to learn, maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was surprised to learn how many people listen to podcasts on YouTube, not because it's a visual podcast. It's still the audio. It's still just like what we're doing. It's going to be the audio, but because they've chosen YouTube as their sort of channel of choice.
Right.
And so once they're there, and
they're there. Right.
They watch some, like I do. I'm pointing to my team. Watch something about cooking or Bart making a drink.
Yeah.
And you listen to a podcast while you're getting dinner ready.
Sure. Absolutely.
People are working those things more and more into their lives, and maybe that means over time, what you're saying is the thing to do now, because over time, that 60-40,
Absolutely.
2/3, 1/3 might shift.
Yeah, Lou, there's a word out there. It's kind of Frankenstein from a couple of words, but it's called edutainment.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
right.
what you just described is edutainment.
Yeah,
it's like I'm just waiting in line. I'm at the grocery store. I'm waiting in line. Or I'm at Walmart, or I'm waiting at the doctor's office, or I'm waiting for the kids.
Right.
I might as well
listening to something.
The first thing we do is pull out our phones. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to compete.
Yeah.
Okay. The government contractor has to compete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I think as we do that, I think people will start, that edutainment piece will grow more legs. And to your point, the new generation of acquisition professionals, they don't know anything else other than smartphones.
Well, and here's the thing too, but it comes down to an individual preference. One of the things I always loved about the federal government was the commitment to a mission. So there are people who do what they do and love it.
Yes.
Then that means they want to learn. So you said edutainment. They want to learn more about, if it's, some ways that environmental impact statements are being done, or something to do with AI, or whatever it is. So they might be seeking out those podcasts just to learn. Makes them, they're interested in it. They're curious personally, professionally, makes them better professionals. And then part of what you're saying, then this is where what you're saying comes in. If you're a contractor and you can create that presence and keep yourself out there in that way.
Right.
And you got to let people know you're doing that. There's a kind of a piece of the marketing where you let people know to look for you and listen to you.
Absolutely.
But once they start, if they find your material valuable, this is what you said a second ago, we're competing for time and attention. If you find the material valuable, you go back to it.
You keep coming back.
Yeah.
You keep coming back. I just wanted to, something I was reminding of something, and you may have had this experience too. Can you remember when there were Lockheed Martin and Raytheon commercials on television?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, think about that. That's not too far ago.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
They had the big ship or big missiles or whatever it was. They had name and brand recognition.
Right.
When is the last time you've even looked at a commercial, much less a Lockheed Martin? Or if you look at Netflix, commercials are gone.
Right.
It's not a thing.
Right. Yeah, that's changed.
Any streaming service, a commercial? When's the last time you've seen a commercial?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the shift. When the big guys had the money and the marketing budgets and the channel through television and the eyeballs, okay, that was an equation that worked in their favor.
Absolutely.
We now have the channels of the small guys. We now have the channels in our favor, and it costs us nothing but a data plan on a cell phone, on a smartphone, to be able to make our own commercials and get in front of the people that we want to get in. Yeah. That's how we compete.
And like you said, we have the benefit by doing that of really educating. So if you're writing blogs, if you're doing a podcast, the way to do it is to teach
and provide value.
And yes. All right. Let's shift in a little bit, because I think there's important implications for what we've discussed for getting on the same page. We implied it. Let's talk about it a little bit more directly. Tell me what you think. So, the podcast, what's it mean to be on the same page? How do we get there? What helps? What hurts? What do we do if we can't? What do you think it means to be on the same page with an acquisition, like the GovCon, but both sides of the equation on the same page?
So on the government side, there are kind of three things. These are based on my experiences.
Right.
There are three things the acquisition team is seeking to do.
All right.
Deliver value.
Okay.
Okay. Execute mission, which are close, but they're separate.
Right.
You can buy the thing and buy it well, but it not solve the problem.
Right.
Okay. So that's two different things. So to deliver value,
all right,
to actually execute the mission, number two, and number three is to reduce risk as much as possible.
All right.
Okay. Now that third one can go so far, the needle can go so far that you go into a risk-averse construct.
Right.
Okay. And then that's detrimental.
Yeah.
But please know that the contracting officer's job is to get that thing across the finish line. Okay, we get measured by what gets accomplished, not what we try.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So things that get in the books, that's how we get in. We have to get in the end zone. How do we get 6 points? Is we've got to get that thing we got to run that ball into the end zone using a football analogy.
Right.
So anything that precludes us from a nice, easy run into the end zone is a risk moment. So the system is designed to reduce the risk as much as possible because the rewards are it's got to get into the end zone.
Right.
So when you think about getting on the same page, those are the 3 pages industry needs to be thinking about. How do they unlock extraordinary value? And that's a one-off. That's a one-off situation. That's event-driven. How does that value contribute to the mission?
Right.
So that you could take the customer experience concept and say, okay, I just built a widget. So awesome widget, but what in the heck is this widget? What's the value this widget is going to provide to the end user, the citizen?
Right.
Okay, the mission construct. Build that into your solutions. Think about the end state, and then reduce the heck out of the risk. One, don't introduce any more risk, okay? And then think about how can you as the widget manufacturer or the service provider reduce risk upstream so it never even gets to the government. And the government never has a conversation about the risk, some risk aspect of your goods or services. Mm-hmm. You should be building risk reduction in from the idea, not after it shows up. It's like, okay, now what's our risk mitigation plan? Right. It's too late.
Right.
It's too late then. So that's from a acquisition perspective. Those are the 3 areas that I think you want to get on the same page. You want to be top of mind, that people remember you and say, oh, these people got to be a part of the mix because they deliver extraordinary value. They make sure that they put metal on target in terms of the mission. Okay, they hit the target every time. Okay, and then third, they are helping us reduce risk. Not introducing risk, but they're helping us reduce.
I like that. Tell me a little bit more about how an acquisition team thinks about the idea of delivering value. I have a way that I could think about that, but tell me when you said those words, what's that mean?
So delivering value I think it's 2 things. It's the goods and services. Mm-hmm. It has a budgetary component, economics component.
Yeah.
Okay. And that in government, we always have to remember we have a body of detractors that are just waiting for us to fail. Okay, you're gonna get it straight from me, Lou.
Terrible.
Okay,
I get it.
When we succeed, no one stands up and claps. But when something falls off the rails, it's like, oh, let's take everybody to the woodshed, please. Okay.
I will.
Okay.
You're too funny.
So we have to always remember that from an acquisition perspective. That's always in the background. We'd attempt to, at least in my time in government, we attempt to not lead with that, knowing that, look, we've got 532 professional detractors. Okay, they are professionals at at pointing out, look what you did. So that's always in the background. So if it's always in the background, it's always in the stew of the solution.
Right.
That when we're building solutions, we gotta think about that. Now, what that does is that causes some risk-averse behavior.
Yeah, it does.
So then it boggles my mind when people talk about, oh, the system is so risk-averse. You built it that way.
Yeah, right.
It's a reaction.
Right.
It's a reaction to the 435 detractors.
Yeah.
Okay.
People are rewarded for playing it safe.
Yes.
They're not rewarded for taking chances. A really fair point you raised about the system, how it's set up, and the effect it has on acquisition professionals, the acquisition team. Are you familiar with something called the business model canvas? You might have seen that over.
I've seen various canvases. The business model may be one, a permutation of the various
it
canvases,
talks about
lean canvases.
Right.
Yeah.
You should check it out. You'd like it. It talks in some very clear ways about 8 elements or 9 elements, I forget, of a business model. I made it down to 8, so I think there's actually 9. And what value means. And it means some of the things that you were saying, but the words they put on it were, you add value to a customer's life or take away pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in the book they just do kind of it's not a heavy thing. It's just like a paragraph of each. There's 3 different ways you can add value. There's 3 different ways to take away pain. A little paragraph of each. Nice description. Just real short and sweet. And so to deliver value could mean, you identified some 3 great things there. If you can define the way you would add value to a customer's life or take away pain from a customer's life, and how that accomplishes business objectives that are part of the mission. And look, man, just talk about what the possible risks are.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I was sitting here thinking about it.
Go ahead. Elaborate on that.
I've got the secret sauce. It's like it's really complex. Sometimes you got to just take a little time and process it. But here's how it's done, and we keep this secret kind of locked up in a vault.
Yeah.
Okay. But for today, I'm going to unlock the secret. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
What's your window? What's your value window?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things we rarely do in government, I see it happening more and more, is what's the solution envelope in terms of price that you're willing to pay?
Yeah.
You don't have to give me the exact number, but are you looking for a $1 million solution or are you looking for a $10 million solution? Those are 2 different solutions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are 2. We may be able to solve the problem both ways.
Yeah.
But which one are you looking for? Because I can then design a solution to fit in your window. Yeah. So we don't even have to have this conversation about affordability.
Yeah.
Okay. Because imagine if you build a $5 million solution for a program that has $4 million. What have you just done?
Yeah.
You created another problem.
Yeah. Right.
You've created another problem. They got to go find $1 million.
Yeah.
And it might be the best solution on the planet for their mission need.
But
what you've done is instead of giving them Tylenol, you just kicked them in the shin.
Yeah. Well, you give them more a headache.
Yeah.
You give them a problem to solve to make it. You make
give
it
them
harder.
an additional problem to solve.
So
imagine asking that question early on.
Right. Well, and if you have a $5 million solution and they're looking for a $1 million, you're overpriced. If they're looking for a $10 million, chances are technically your solution's not technically acceptable.
As robust.
Right.
Yeah, it's not as robust because they're willing to invest more. They're willing to invest more in the solution.
Right. Great point. There's a few things about risk to talk about, one of which is you could spend more money to reduce risk. You could spend a little bit less money and accept a little bit more risk. That's a conversation to have.
It's conversation. Okay. Back to communication.
Now, pause all these thoughts for a second and think, what if a government contracting officer, the CO, working with the PM, puts a solicitation on the street and doesn't know much more about the world of that problem and solution than what they already know. And the contracting companies that get it don't know much more about what the government's wrestling with than what they read. That's not a winning opportunity for anybody.
No, Lou, what you just described is the world's most expensive version of read my mind.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
It's like, well, I'm not going to tell you everything, and I'm not going to ask everything.
Exactly.
And then throw stuff in the pot, and we'll pick out the one that was closest to what I was thinking.
Exactly.
It's like, dude.
Exactly.
Why not just talk?
Exactly.
Why not just talk?
And so to have more conversation, you've got your industry days, you've got your one-on-one meetings, you've got sort of the show and tell part of an acquisition decision-making process. I like the demonstrations, I like the presentations. Then layer that onto that, the channels we talked about, and being a presence on them so that people who are subject matter experts in an area, and they know who's in that space doing what, and they're listening to those podcasts or they're reading those blogs, right? Now you're talking about a different level of information exchange, right?
Yes.
And, you could think about marketing as a means to the end of closing a deal. Okay, it's that, but it could be more than that if it's about that edutainment piece.
Yeah.
Now you're just doing something different, and you're showing value when you're not asking for anything.
Yeah, that's fair. Lou, one of the things that one of the words that I like using in lieu of marketing is branding.
Right.
And what you're doing is you're building a virtual avatar of your business.
Right.
This is what we stand for. You're not selling anything, and I think we've been around each other enough. I don't think I have a sales bone in my body. I'm not built that way. Okay, so what I had to learn to do is to demonstrate value by articulating the brand of William Randolph and Think Acquisition. That whenever you hear those two phrases, that name William Randolph, or that company name Think Acquisition, something comes along with it. There's a body of understanding that comes along with it. We're not selling anything overtly, okay?
Yeah.
But there's a business behind there. There's an ongoing business concern behind that name and that company name.
Yeah.
But not once will you see something, only $9.99. It's like, no. Here's the brand. If you want to interact, if you think our Tylenol will solve your backache,
let's talk.
Yeah. Let's talk. And you attract the person you want to do business with. That has been my business model for the last 3 years, is that I attract the people that want to do business
with you,
that think that I can provide and unlock value for them. And then there's no such thing as a cold call then.
Right. Yeah.
They're all warm and jolly. It's like, where have you been all my life?
That's fantastic, man. That's fantastic. And I've watched some of your stuff online, so I know exactly what you're talking, because you do it. You're living what you're espousing. We've covered some good stuff and kind of rounded it out, sort of tied it together. Was there anything else you wanted to go over?
No, I think I'm good. We touched a lot of stuff. So yeah.
Touched some good stuff. I really appreciate your time. This is like I knew we were going to have fun, because we always had these conversations.
Absolutely.
We had another one. Learned a lot, as I always do, talking to you. And I appreciate you spending time with me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. We're welcome to come back anytime. This is just two friends having a chat. We're just inviting people to listen in.
That's what I love about it. They can listen in. All right, my friend.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. You be well.
Thank you, sir. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's how we see it, my friends. I want to thank Will for recording today's episode. You can find it at iseewhatyoumean.castos.com, plus all the usual places. Send questions and suggestions through the app. Subscribe and give me a 5-star rating unless you can't, in which case, tell me why. And join me next week when we take another look at how to get on the same page and stay there, unless we shouldn't.